the late 16th century, England dreamed of building a new world across the Atlantic. The Spanish Empire had already established powerful colonies. Gold flowed back to Europe. Trade routes expanded. New territories were claimed almost every year. England wanted its place in this new age of exploration. Among those who believed in this dream was Sir Walter Raleigh. With the blessing of Queen Elizabeth I, he sponsored an ambitious expedition to the coast of North America. The destination was a small island along what is now the coast of North Carolina, a place the English called Roanoke. At first, the island seemed promising. Dense forests stretched toward the horizon. Freshwater sources could be found nearby. Fish filled the surrounding waters. Wildlife appeared abundant. To the explorers, it looked like the perfect location for England's first permanent settlement in the New World. But appearances can be deceiving. The first English expeditions made contact with the indigenous peoples who already called this land home. Some encounters were friendly. Trade took place. Guides offered assistance. Maps were drawn. Yet misunderstandings quickly appeared. Different languages, different customs, different expectations. Trust was fragile, and tension slowly began to grow. Despite these challenges, England pressed forward. In 1587, a new group of settlers arrived. Unlike earlier expeditions, these were not soldiers searching for strategic positions. They were families, craftsmen, farmers, women, children. They intended to stay. Their leader was John White, an experienced artist and governor who had already traveled through the region. The settlers immediately began building homes. Wooden cabins rose from the clearing. Gardens were planted. Supplies were carefully organized. The dream of an English colony finally seemed within reach. Life was difficult from the very beginning. The settlers depended heavily on supplies brought from England. Local crops required unfamiliar farming techniques. Weather conditions differed from those back home. Every mistake carried serious consequences. Food quickly became a constant concern. Relationships with nearby indigenous communities remained uncertain. Some groups continued to trade peacefully. Others viewed the newcomers with growing suspicion. Small conflicts gradually increased the pressure on the struggling settlement. Still, there were moments of hope. One remarkable event lifted everyone's spirits. Governor John White's daughter gave birth to a baby girl. Her name was Virginia Dare. She became the first English child born in North America. The birth symbolized a future filled with possibility. A permanent English presence in the New World no longer seemed like a distant dream. But reality soon returned. The colony desperately needed additional food, tools, seeds, medical supplies. Without help from England, survival through another season appeared unlikely. The settlers pleaded with Governor White to return home and gather reinforcements. White hesitated. He understood the dangers of leaving the colony behind. But he also knew remaining without supplies could prove even more dangerous. Reluctantly, he agreed. In late 1587, John White boarded a ship bound for England. He promised his family and the colonists that he would return as quickly as possible. None of them realized they were saying goodbye for the last time. The voyage across the Atlantic proved difficult. Political events in Europe created unexpected delays. England now faced the growing threat of invasion by the Spanish Armada. Ships that might have carried supplies to Roanoke were redirected for military service. Days turned into weeks. Weeks became months. Months became years. John White waited impatiently. Every passing season increased his fear that the colony might not survive. Finally, after nearly 3 years, he secured passage back to North America. The journey was filled with hope. Perhaps the colony had endured. Perhaps Virginia Dare had grown into a healthy child. Perhaps the settlement had become everything they had imagined. But when the ships reached Roanoke, something was terribly wrong. The settlement was silent. No smoke rose from the chimneys. No voices echoed through the trees. No children ran across the open ground. The colony had disappeared. John White stepped onto the shore with cautious optimism. At first, he believed the colonists might simply be away hunting or gathering supplies. The silence felt unusual, but not yet alarming. As he walked toward the settlement, the truth slowly revealed itself. The houses still stood. Some had collapsed from years of exposure. Others appeared to have been carefully dismantled. There were no signs of battle, no burned buildings, no scattered weapons, no human remains, no graves. Everything suggested that the settlers had left the colony deliberately. But where had they gone? White searched every structure. Storage areas were empty. Personal belongings had disappeared. Food supplies were gone. Even heavy equipment had been removed. Whoever left had taken time to prepare. This was not a panicked escape. It was an organized departure. Then, White noticed something carved into a wooden fence post. The word Crow. Only 3 letters. Nearby, another message appeared, carved into a tree. Croatoan. It was the only clue left behind. Years earlier, White had made an agreement with the colonists. If they ever abandoned the settlement, they would carve their destination into a tree or post. If they were forced to leave under attack, they would also carve a Maltese cross as a warning. White searched carefully. There was no cross, only the word Croatoan. To him, this seemed encouraging. Croatoan was the name of a nearby island. It was also the home of an indigenous community that had previously maintained friendly relations with the English settlers. Perhaps the colonists had simply relocated. Perhaps they had found safety there. White immediately wanted to sail to Croatoan Island, but nature intervened once again. Strong storms battered the coast. The ship's captains feared becoming trapped. Supplies were already running low. Reluctantly, the expedition abandoned the search. John White was forced to leave North America without finding his family. He never saw his daughter again. He never learned what became of Virginia Dare, and he never discovered the fate of the lost colony. The mystery spread rapidly throughout England. How could an entire settlement disappear? More than 100 men, women, and children vanished without leaving behind a single confirmed answer. Over time, stories began to grow. Some believed the colonists had been massacred. Others believed disease had wiped them out. Some imagined pirate attacks. Others blamed the Spanish. Yet there was almost no physical evidence supporting any theory. The silence surrounding Roanoke became as mysterious as the disappearance itself. Decades passed. Explorers continued arriving in North America. Many searched for clues. Some claimed to meet indigenous people with gray eyes or European features. Others reported hearing stories of strangers who had lived among nearby tribes years before. None of these accounts could be fully verified, yet they kept the mystery alive. Perhaps the colonists had not vanished at all. Perhaps they had simply become part of another community. If that were true, the lost colony had never truly been lost. It had simply changed forever. Still, without definitive proof, Roanoke remained one of history's greatest unsolved mysteries. A colony that seemed to disappear without a trace, leaving behind only a single word: Croatoan. A word that would puzzle historians for more than 4 centuries. For more than 400 years, the mystery of Roanoke has inspired countless theories. Each one attempts to answer the same question: what happened to more than 100 settlers? The most widely accepted explanation is surprisingly simple. The colonists survived, but not alone. Many historians believe they joined the Croatoan people. This theory begins with the word carved into the tree: Croatoan. It was not a random message. It was a destination. The Croatoan people had previously welcomed English visitors. Trade had taken place. Friendships had formed. Unlike some neighboring groups, relations had often remained peaceful. Faced with starvation and isolation, joining an established indigenous community may have been the only realistic chance of survival. Life in coastal North America demanded knowledge the English settlers simply did not possess. The Croatoan knew where to fish, when to plant, how to survive harsh winters, which plants could heal, which could kill. For struggling colonists, that knowledge could mean the difference between life and death. Over time, families may have merged, languages may have blended. Children may have grown up with both English and indigenous traditions. Eventually, the original colony may have disappeared not through death, but through assimilation. Several early English explorers later reported meeting indigenous communities whose members appeared different. Some described lighter hair. Others mentioned gray or blue eyes. A few claimed certain families spoke words that sounded strangely English. These reports remain controversial. Most were written years after the disappearance. Some may have been exaggerated. Others may simply reflect the observer's expectations. Yet they continue to fuel one of history's most compelling possibilities. Another theory points toward violence. The late 16th century was an unstable time. Competition for land was increasing. Resources were limited. Misunderstandings between cultures sometimes escalated into deadly conflict. Could another indigenous nation have attacked the settlement? Archaeologists have searched for evidence of a massacre: burned buildings, weapons, human remains, mass graves. So far, none have been found. The absence of such evidence weakens the theory. Still, it cannot be completely dismissed. Another possibility involves disease. The settlers arrived carrying illnesses unfamiliar to local populations. Likewise, they encountered diseases against which they possessed little natural resistance. Malnutrition weakened immune systems. Limited medical knowledge offered few treatments. A severe outbreak could have devastated the colony. Yet even disease does not explain the complete disappearance of every person. If the colonists died where they lived, why has no cemetery ever been found? Another theory looks beyond Roanoke entirely. Some historians believe the settlers attempted to move inland. Rather than remaining on the vulnerable coast, they may have established a new settlement farther from the ocean. Rivers offered transportation. Forests provided protection. Fresh farmland promised greater opportunities. Several archaeological sites have uncovered English artifacts far from Roanoke Island. Fragments of pottery, metal tools, glass beads, gun parts. Do these objects belong to the lost colony? Or were they simply traded between English explorers and indigenous communities? The evidence remains frustratingly incomplete. Then there is the Spanish theory. At the time, Spain viewed England as both a political and religious rival. Spanish forces operated throughout the Caribbean and parts of North America. Some historians suggested that Spanish soldiers discovered and destroyed the colony. However, Spanish military records are remarkably detailed. No surviving document clearly describes such an attack. For most researchers, this explanation remains unlikely. One of the most intriguing discoveries emerged from an old map created by Governor John White himself. Centuries after his death, researchers carefully examined the original document using modern imaging technology. Hidden beneath a small patch glued onto the map, they discovered the outline of what appeared to be a fort. Could White have secretly planned a second settlement farther inland? If so, perhaps the colonists followed those plans after he departed. Excavations near the proposed location uncovered several English artifacts dating to the correct period. Once again, the discoveries raised exciting possibilities, but not definitive answers. Every new clue seemed to solve one mystery while creating another. Roanoke refused to surrender its secrets, and perhaps that is why the story continues to fascinate us, because every generation believes it may finally uncover the truth. Centuries have passed since the settlers vanished. Empires have risen and fallen. Maps have changed. Entire nations have been born. Yet the mystery of Roanoke remains. Modern archaeology has transformed the search. Researchers no longer rely only on old journals and eyewitness accounts. Ground-penetrating radar, satellite imagery, geophysical surveys, advanced DNA analysis. Every new technology offers another opportunity to uncover the truth. Excavations continue across North Carolina. Fragments of pottery, iron tools, gun flints, pieces of English ceramics. Small discoveries emerge from the soil every few years. Individually, they reveal very little. Together, they begin to paint a larger picture. Many archaeologists now believe the colonists did not simply disappear. Instead, they slowly dispersed. Some may have traveled to Croatoan Island. Others may have moved inland. Small groups may have joined different indigenous communities in order to survive. Rather than one dramatic event, the colony may have faded away through a series of practical decisions. For people facing starvation, adaptation would have been the most logical choice. History often remembers dramatic endings, battles, disasters, massacres. But survival is usually quieter. Families relocate, communities merge, cultures influence one another, names disappear. Yet people continue living. Perhaps that is exactly what happened at Roanoke. The settlers may not have vanished. They may simply have become part of another world. One question still captures the imagination of historians. What became of Virginia Dare, the first English child born in North America? She was only an infant when Governor John White sailed back to England. No verified record of her life has ever been found. Legends soon emerged. Some claimed she grew up among indigenous communities. Others imagined she became the heroine of forgotten stories. Writers transformed her into a symbol of mystery and hope. But history remains silent. We simply do not know. Modern genetic research has occasionally raised new possibilities. Some families living in the region believe they may descend from members of the lost colony. DNA studies continue. Yet, after more than 4 centuries, finding conclusive proof remains extraordinarily difficult. Too much time has passed. Too many generations have lived and died. Even if descendants exist, the evidence may never be complete. Perhaps the greatest lesson of Roanoke is not about disappearance. It is about survival. History is filled with stories that end abruptly, but real life is rarely so simple. People adapt, communities change, cultures blend. The lost colony reminds us that the past is often far more complex than legends suggest. The single word carved into that tree, Croatoan, may never have been intended as a mystery. Perhaps it was simply a message, a direction, a promise that the colonists had found another chance to live. And perhaps history misunderstood it for centuries. Today, new discoveries continue to emerge. Archaeologists still excavate. Historians still debate. Scientists still analyze every fragment of evidence. The mystery remains open, not because nothing has been learned, but because every answer reveals another question. That is the nature of history. It is never truly finished. Every generation returns to the evidence. Every generation sees something the previous one missed. And perhaps, one day, a forgotten journal, an overlooked archaeological site, or an unexpected scientific breakthrough will finally reveal what became of the lost colony. Until then, Roanoke remains one of history's greatest mysteries, a place where hope crossed an ocean, where families dreamed of a new beginning, and where those dreams disappeared into the forests of the New World. As the sun sets over the quiet shores of Roanoke, the wind moves gently through the trees. Much has changed since 1687, yet the landscape still whispers the same unanswered questions. Somewhere beneath these forests, beneath the rivers, or hidden within forgotten settlements, the final chapter may still exist. Waiting, just as it has waited for more than 4 centuries. History often celebrates kings, empires, wars, and famous victories. But sometimes, its greatest stories belong to ordinary people, families searching for a better future, parents protecting their children. communities struggling to survive in an unfamiliar world. Perhaps that is why the lost colony continues to capture our imagination, because we do not simply wonder where they went. We wonder what we would have done in their place. Would we have stayed? Would we have fought? Or would we have embraced a new life among strangers, leaving our old world behind forever? The mystery of Roanoke reminds us that history is not only written in books, it is written in choices, in courage, in hope, and sometimes in silence. Perhaps the colonists were never truly lost. Perhaps only their story was, waiting patiently for someone to find it again.